Hey everyone, it's Justin again. In this lesson, we're going to learn how to use equations in standard form to represent scenarios. Then we'll be able to find solutions that can be useful in the context of the situation. Let's get started by looking at a scenario about breakfast tacos. This example says, you have been sent to purchase breakfast tacos and sides of breakfast potatoes. The tacos cost $4 each, and the sides of potatoes cost $3 each. You have exactly $48 to spend. When we see scenarios like this in math, often we're trying to figure something out, like perhaps what order you should be placing. In order to do that, we first need to translate the scenario into math. We should start by keeping track of all the information in this problem. What information do we know about this scenario? Yeah, we have $4 per taco and $3 for each side of potatoes. We also have $48 to spend, so this would be considered our total amount. So we know a lot of information, but what are some things we don't know? Do we know how many tacos and sides you have to buy? We don't. How do we normally represent something mathematically if we don't know its value? Yeah, we use a variable. You can label them using any letters you want to, for example, x and y. And we don't need to consider which variable is independent or dependent here. It makes sense that the number of sides you'll buy depends on the number of tacos, but since it would be just as logical to say that the tacos depend on the sides, we can't really define one as dependent and one as independent. The most important part is making sure to keep track of what they mean and not get them mixed up. For that reason, I'm going to use t for the number of tacos and s for the number of sides instead. Well, I see a lot of words up here that can be translated to math, and I know that we have two variables. Maybe we can write an equation to represent this. Do you have any ideas on how to turn this into an equation? Let's start with this description. The word per here, $4 per taco. That means $4 for every single taco. And that sounds like multiplication. So this can be written mathematically as 4 times t, or 4t. Can you use the same approach to write this mathematically? Similar to the word per in this scenario, for each is another way to say multiplication. So here we have 3 times s, or 3s. Now what about this total? How do we represent total mathematically? Total means equals, so we can say that something equals 48. Now, how would these two other terms come together to equal 48? Would we multiply the terms to equal their total? Or subtract the terms to equal their total? Or is it addition? Or division? What operation do you think belongs between these terms? Relate this back to the original scenario to see if what you're thinking makes sense. When purchasing items, we have to add the costs together to get the total. So the operation between these should be addition. This is great. We have just come up with the equation that represents this situation. Let's put our equation up here, and we definitely don't want to forget what our variables actually stand for. Now, what's next? Why did we figure out an equation for this in the first place? Could this equation maybe be helpful when trying to place an order? Well, what if I told you that you have 6 people to feed, so you need to buy 6 tacos? How could this equation help you to get ready to place your order? Yeah, we can substitute in 6 for t and solve to figure out how many sides to order. Go ahead and solve this to find how many sides of potatoes you would be ordering. Pause the video now so you have as much time as you need to do this. I got that S equals 8. If you didn't get that, take a moment to check your work against mine. Now, wait, hold on. I completely got caught up in solving this and forgot what S equals 8 actually means. Can you remind me? This is something about tacos, right? Oh, right, okay. 8 represents the number of sides you'll need to buy if you purchase the 6 tacos. So let's write this to show people what we just figured out. This is great. I would definitely feel more confident going to place my order knowing exactly what I need to buy. All right, it's time to complete 2 example problems. Here's the first one. This one says, Jen owns a food truck that sells sandwiches and salads and is preparing to sell at a local event. She's ready to sell 50 sandwiches and 40 salads and would like to bring in $1,200 worth of business. There are a few parts to this problem, and it may look like a lot at first, so I want you to go through this at your own pace and see if you can complete parts A and B. Maybe what I just showed you in the tacos example is enough for you to figure this all out on your own. It's worth a try. Pause the video now and see what you can come up with. Let's start with part A of this question. We want to write an equation to represent this situation. Let's start by organizing the information we were given. We know that Jen's food truck is ready to sell 50 sandwiches and 40 salads and wants to bring in $1,200 by selling them. Now, what are some things we don't know? Do we know how many sandwiches and salads she anticipates selling? Yes, this time we do know how many, 50 sandwiches and 40 salads. But what do we still need to know in order to calculate a total of $1,200? We need to know how much the sandwiches and salads will cost, or in other words, what her prices should be. Remind me again, how we can represent something if we don't know its value. Yeah, we use a variable. You can label them using any letters you want to, but this time both sandwich and salad start with an S, and I can't use the same variable for both of them. So I decided to go with the good old X and Y. I'm going to use X for the price of a sandwich and the Y for the price of a salad. We're ready to take all this and translate it into a mathematical equation. If you weren't able to come up with an equation earlier, can you figure it out now? Let's start with this description. I see the word per again in price per sandwich, which indicates multiplication. To get the total amount of money made on sandwiches, we need to multiply the number of sandwiches sold by their price. So this can be written mathematically as 50 times x, or 50x. Now let's write this mathematically. To figure out how much money is earned from just the salad sales, we need to multiply how many are sold times the price of each one. So we have 40 times y, or 40y. Remind me what total means again. Right, total means equals, so we can say that something equals 1,200. Now, how would these two other terms come together to equal 1,200? What operation belongs between these? Adding these together would give us the total sales. Perfect! We have the equation, and we know what the variables stand for. Let's just clean this up a little. We'll need to focus on part B next, so let me make a little workspace here. Now, this asks how much she needs to sell each salad for if she decides to sell each sandwich for $14. What variable does the 14 represent, and what variable are we trying to solve for? 14 is the price of a sandwich, which is x. So let's substitute 14 for x into the equation. Then we can find what we're looking for, which is the price of a salad. Go ahead and solve for the price of each salad on your own. Compare what you have with my work. And let's box in our final answer. Wait, y equals... No, what does this even mean? Here, this is a better way to write the answer because it actually tells us what the 12.5 means in this scenario. This says if she sells all the sandwiches for $14, then she needs to sell all the salads for $12.50 in order to meet her sales goal. Let's put everything back up here so you can finalize your thoughts and answers for this problem. Take a moment to make sure your notes are clear and complete. Hey, do you remember what we talked about in the first lesson of this unit? About helping my younger cousin make his birthday party decisions? Well, we've learned a lot since then, and we can apply a lot of our new knowledge to that scenario in our second example problem. Pause the video and read through this scenario and the questions that go along with it. Then try to find the answers to these questions using what you've learned so far. Do this now. The equation I use to represent this is 10f plus 2t equals 200, with f representing the number of friends he brings and t representing the number of tickets he can purchase for them to share. You did not need to use the same variables as me. As long as 10 is multiplied by your variable for friends and 2 is multiplied by your variable for tickets, you are all good. Now, moving on to part B, how many ride tickets can he purchase to share if he wants to invite 8 friends? Since 8 is the number of friends, or f, let's substitute 8 into the equation for f. This gives us that he can purchase 60 ride tickets to share with his 8 friends. Now for part C. How much money would he spend on ride tickets if he invited 8 friends? Well, we just calculated that they would have 60 tickets to use, and each ticket costs $2. So 2 times 60 equals 120. Therefore, my cousin would spend $120 on ride tickets to share with his 8 friends. This is a great start in helping him decide how many friends to invite to his birthday party, but there are definitely more options to consider, which is what our next lesson will focus on. But for now, we know that you can set up a standard form equation to represent a scenario, and you know how to calculate specific solutions and interpret their meaning. Mia is already thinking about how to use this to help a friend out. You'll get to help out Mia's volleyball friend in the additional practice right after your notes, so be sure to check that out next. Then you'll be ready to take on that practice game. Good luck with that, and I'll see you next time.